All right, as people are filtering in, I have the great pleasure to introduce our panel, or to introduce our moderator for today. So you are here at Welcome to Building Tomorrow's, Welcome, that was my note to myself. Thanks, Allison. Building Tomorrow's Success, Business Development Insights, moderated by Lori Creever. I'm going to turn it over to Lori after I tell you just a couple things about her. She is a lifelong student of the humanities. I'm just reading this from your thing you gave me. A graduate of the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, she started her career working in live television, so a celebrity. That's what we deliver here at FRAC. Followed by half a dozen years in New York City working in music and theater. She's a founding member of Jester's Comedy Improv and a veteran onstage performer. She's the author of the book Protege Power, which you can look at down in the Brewer's Den, right? Do we have some copies down there?
Good idea.
Yes, we will have copies down in the Brewer's Den. Or on Amazon. And she draws from her 2 decades as an employee engagement programs designer and leader in international banking. And I think she's the perfect person to keep a very raucous group of salespeople in line on this panel so that we can all learn from them. So I'm going to hand it over to Lori to introduce the panel.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to talk about this because I feel like no matter where we are in life, we always need more guidance, more great ideas and stories around selling, how to sell our business and how to sell ourselves. So let's get the panel out. We've got the sales fixer, Tom Holderly. And thank you, Tom has the distinction of introducing me to Fractional and Voyager U. And I feel like when you introduced me to it, I was wondering, am I fractional? Am I a numerator or a denominator? Which is it?
Excellent. Yeah, that's been 2 years ago that we had that conversation. Yes. And yeah, so what are you?
Here we are. I know, it's still deliberating. We're going to do a survey after. Please have a seat. It's great to have you here. Next is Gario Harrison. Woo! Gario is co-CEO and partner at Stoneford, and their consulting group specializes in helping companies with revenue growth. He's also an angel investor with Groove Capital. I would love to hear about that. Welcome. And finally, representing the great state of Connecticut is Jake Stahl. He is a Chief Learning Officer, a fractional CLO. I just learned that term at our conference, CLO, Chief Learning Officer. And it's great to have you here. It's great to have all of you here. So let's get started by finding out. We'll start with you, Jake. Just each of you gentlemen, tell us a bit about how did you find your way into the fractional world? Oh, yeah. After we hit the on button for our microphones. Jake.
The impetus for me was frustration. I spent a lot of time in corporate America and just had a lot of passions about what I wanted to do and not enough people who saw my passion. So I started a consulting gig and really got into it. And then probably about 7 or 8 years ago, I started to branch off and talk to people just about having me as a learning officer or their head of training and development for a short period of time. And people looked at me kind of odd. It's like, I want to hire you or I don't want to have you. And it's like, well, I want to just be with you part-time. So a couple of months back, maybe 6 months back, somebody said, hey, there's a fractional event going on. And I'm like, what's a fractional event? And then after I heard about it, I went down to my wife. I said, guess what I am? Apparently, I'm fractional. So that's how I got into it.
Lifelong learning.
Yeah, exactly right.
Gario, how did you find your way into the fractional universe?
Well, my path is not as exciting, but I used to work at a co-working space very similar to this, and I ran sales, operations, and marketing for that firm. And the company was called Coco at the time, became Fuel Collective, and we were in the process of becoming a franchise. So the process of putting together like sales and marketing plans that are easily repeatable, and someone could just take it on and run with it. I was responsible for putting that together for the franchise. Well, one of the things I really loved about being in the co-working industry is you get to see a lot of small businesses, a lot of startups, a lot of folks that are just kind of at different stages of their business. And I would really enjoy just sort of sharing what we're doing at Fueled at the time with them so they could apply it to their business. Fast forward, the company became a franchise, and I had the opportunity to go out on my own and do that for more small businesses. And that was the start of this fractional journey.
Wow. Tom?
Well, my journey was a little bit different. I had spent 30 years in corporate America, typically with larger companies and a variety of sales leadership positions. And then I had been recruited to join a small local company and spent some time helping them build out their sales process, their infrastructure. And when that engagement was over, I really didn't know what was next. And during my time in corporate, I had run into one or two fractional CFOs. I had no idea what this world was all about. I really didn't understand fractional. I credit a lot of this to John Arms. I ran into John as I was looking for my next, whether I was going to do W-2 or what have you, and John was very instrumental in helping me decide to go fractional. And then I got connected with a group called Sales Acceleration, which specialized in helping salespeople go fractional. And so, I decided that I wanted to help small to mid-sized companies grow and succeed and not be living out of an airport. And so I took the plunge and became fractional.
That's great. Thank you. So next, we're going to start with Gario, and I'd like each of you gentlemen to express to us, in your experience and opinion, what is a good mindset for selling yourself as a fractional talent? And I'm thinking about a lot of us, if we have a sales background, maybe it was at a beloved Minnesota company like 3M, and we had sales training, and maybe we were responsible for selling Post-it notes into Target stores or Scotch tape or something like that. So selling and moving a physical product. But this is different. This is selling yourself as a talent. And as we all know, it's so important to be able to thrive and flourish. So what's a mindset on selling yourself as a fractional talent, starting with Gario?
I'm glad that you framed it as a mindset, because you do need to believe that you can actually provide value and help the prospect, for all intensive sales purposes, actually solve a problem. So you have to believe first and foremost that you can solve that problem. And then the mental model that I coach sales folks on, and I use myself, is if a prospect is not understanding or seeing the value, then it's on me to figure out how do I help them understand that. Because at the end of the day, I want to see them succeed, and if I'm able to help them do that, then it's on me to figure that out.
Excellent. Jake, how would you characterize the mindset of selling yourself as a fractional professional?
I think the hardest part is seeing the value in you. A lot of times when you look in the mirror, you look back and you go, why would anybody pay for my advice, especially pay good money for my advice? Because you think what you know, everybody knows, but they don't. And you need to get through the mindset that you're like everybody else. You're not. You're coming into the game with a lot of knowledge in one area. Knowledge people will pay for. But I agree with Gario 100%. This is a mindset. You have to look in the mirror and say, what I have offers value. And you have to know there's a lot of people out there that'll pay for what you have. And you're going to have down days, but they're mostly up days. So.
Good. Thank you. Tom?
Well, I firmly believe that you haven't really sold until you've tried to sell yourself and your own services. What I have learned in the past, I've been a fractional now about 2 years, and as I tell people from what I call my former life, what I have learned in the past 2 years about networking, business development, had I known this 10, 15 years ago when I was in the corporate world, it would have been a game changer. And I think one of the first things, kind of to Jake's point, one of the first things is that you have to get over the imposter syndrome. As he said, you add value, you have a superpower, so how do you articulate that? How do you make it memorable? That's key, but getting past the imposter syndrome is really instrumental in setting the stage for your continued growth.
Oh, that's good. That's very helpful, all of you. Wow. All right. A lot of us, I'm sure, have found when things are just going super well, you're not necessarily stretching or learning that much. Sometimes we learn when we fall flat on our face, frankly. So we're going to start with Tom. Is there, related to selling and developing new business, would you be willing to indulge us with a time when things didn't go well in that sales cycle, but then what were the nuggets that you took from that are helpful?
For me, when I went through the program with Sales Acceleration or Voyager U, their online curriculum, a lot of people and a lot of other fractionals I talked to, people had a roadmap that if you have X number of networking meetings a week, if you do so many posts on LinkedIn, if you follow this formula, your business will be up and rolling in 90 to 120 days. I don't know. Maybe I'm slower than most. It took me almost 9 months before I got my first client. And I was kind of at my wit's end, because once again, I was in between. I wasn't working, so this was my gig. And I talked to a fellow advisor out on the West Coast who I had heard also had struggled, and he shared with me. He said, "Hey," he goes, "it took me over a year to get my first client." And I was like, "Oh, don't tell me that." But he goes, "By the end of year number 2, he's like, I'm one of the top advisors within Sales Acceleration." So his advice, and I think he was spot on, stick to the process. Have a plan, stick to the process, and continue to follow it, because everyone's journey is different. I mean, some advisors are getting clients, within a couple of weeks of starting their own practice. Others, take over a year. So everybody's journey is different, but have a process and stick to it.
That's great. That's a good reminder to persevere. Yeah. Gario? Lessons learned? Nuggets mined from maybe times that weren't rosy, or an instance?
I'm thinking of a specific time. So when the pandemic hit, everything changed, right? You went from all the networking meetings that we're normally doing at coffees, all that went to 0, right? The default with everything, with all the marketers, not to disparage any marketers in the room, I'm one of them, I did this, spend a lot of time tinkering with automations and a lot of these things that felt like activity, felt like progress. And it wasn't until I stopped doing that and spent time just really trying to have those same human-to-human interactions, even though it was virtual, that things started to pick up. The rest of the time, I was just yelling into the void like everybody else. So to sum it all up, it's don't get caught up in all the technology, the automations, the things that are kind of getting in between you and the conversations that actually lead to opportunity, but just get there as fast as you can.
Good. Thank you. Jake?
Well, those were 2 great answers. I ran into both of those. I think the biggest thing that got into my way is what my family and I affectionately refer to as the nickel syndrome. I get focused on something and I go, oh, look, a nickel. And then I'm off to pick up the nickel, and then I'm on to something else, and it's like, oh, there's another nickel. So I would say that a lot of my time was wasted going off on tangents. Because I'm in training and development, I have a fascination with just about any topic, and unfortunately, I follow a lot of topics down rabbit holes, and it became a waste of time. And I'll be honest with you, it wasn't until the past year that I talked with somebody about it, and they're like, "Man, you're just not focusing." And they were right. So I was doing a lot of wasted effort. And I think the speakers this morning talked a lot about that, getting a vision and sticking with it. And yeah, that was my biggest problem. I would be doing great, and then I'd be off on a tangent and wondering what the heck happened.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm curious, the three of you, do any of you have an executive assistant, a virtual assistant, someone that, for example, helps you with your inbox? I feel like most of us have a bombardment throughout the day, especially if you have more than one email, maybe a personal email address with your family and friends, and then your work email. Do you have any strategies, just talking about getting swept into tangents that look like opportunities, but maybe they're not? Any kind of assistance or support staff that helps you with that so that you can stay as tightly focused on your production activities as possible?
So I do not at this point. Many fellow advisors do. They have a virtual personal assistant. They have an agency or somebody that does a lot of their content on LinkedIn. I don't feel that I'm to that level yet. I'm still building my business, but I see value in that. Some of the things that I would recommend, early on if you're just starting. Little things like, Calendly, as far as managing your calendar, that can really help. Having the discipline to set your time, because one of the traps that people fall into is that when you're just starting out, you're networking like crazy, you're going to events like crazy, then you start getting busy. And the business development, the networking drops off. And so a lot of advisors run into this feast-famine cycle. They have a bunch of clients, they're busy, business development stops, then as their projects wrap up, now all of a sudden they don't have anything in the pipeline. They try to get that engine going again. So the key there is no matter how busy you are with client work, set aside a certain amount of time each week. Maybe it's a half a day Monday, half a day Friday, to do your networking, do your outreach, maintain that visibility and being top of mind. Otherwise, you will fall in that feast-famine cycle. Just to go off on a tangent for a second, kind of to the last question. For those of you who are fractional curious, read the book The Go-Giver, because that is one way to help, is that the more that you can add value to people as you're out networking, doing your business development, the more, the faster things will come back around, because you will be seen as, like Tara said, a thought leader, an expert, that maybe somebody has a question, it's not your area of expertise, but somebody else, that just elevates your status as well.
That's good. Oh, Jake, did you want?
So I will stump for something just for a minute. There are a lot of startups out there that are offering to connect you with people from very talented individuals in South America, Africa, overseas, where you can have them do work for you, but are extremely talented. They're amazing people. So I have someone who helps with my LinkedIn. I will write an article, they'll make sure it gets out and things get done. And it's funny you mentioned a book, Tom. There's a book I would also highly recommend. It's called 10X is Easier Than 2X. It's truly inspirational. If you haven't read it, it gives you the motivation on the days where you're not feeling super motivated.
Good. Gario, any tips, resources that you have?
Yeah, so both those books are amazing. Like Go-Giver is one that I always recommend as well. I think if the focus is around making sure you have a healthy pipeline, you have to visualize that pipeline. Like you have to be able to see when do you need to be prospecting and when do you have enough activity on the front end, and you just need to hyper-focus on closing. So, really investing on the front end to get a CRM that can show you just kind of where you're at activity-wise is super important. I highly recommend HubSpot for that because the free version gets you a long way. The second thing that I would suggest is, don't be afraid to pick up the phone. I think in today's selling world, folks, the phone weighs a ton. You have to pick up the phone and talk to people, even if it's just to say, hey, I just sent you an email following up. Just be intentional with getting comfortable, stepping into the arena and actually overcoming the objections by talking to people. Don't use, it's easy to get in the habit of feeling busy, right? Instead of actually having conversations with the people that are actually going to move your business forward. So those are the two things I'd recommend.
That's really good. So, Gario, you mentioned HubSpot. Anything else that you would like to say, or Jake or Tom, on CRM? Do each of you use a CRM? How do you use it? Let's talk more about that.
Sure. So my worldview on CRM, actually, in my corporate days, I fought it. We were putting in.
Tom, I knew you were a rebel.
Yep. Want nothing to do with it. I do use CRM today. HubSpot is a great one. But what I tell people is, whether it's for you personally or for a client, that you're working with, many people put CRM in for the wrong reason. In the corporate world, put in for the wrong reason. They put it in because the CEO or CFO wants visibility to the sales pipeline. Not a bad reason, but that can't be your primary reason. Your primary reason has to be that CRM adds value to your sales process. And if it doesn't,
Getting some applause on that, yeah.
if it doesn't, it's not going to be adopted. It's not going to be used. And then you'll fall into the second trap that most large corporations fall into. They weaponize it. They use it to beat people up versus adding value to the process. So my advice on CRM is, don't get wrapped around the axle with Salesforce or Dynamics. Pick one that's user-friendly and think about what you need it to do. Most people, most organizations need a place to store their contacts. They need a place to store quotes and proposals. They need a mild dashboard as far as where they are. And maybe they want to do some marketing from it, some sort of newsletter, outreach, what have you. So you don't need to spend tons and tons of money on a massive CRM. Keep it simple. HubSpot's a good one. There's others as well. But make sure that it fits your process.
Good. Jake, do you want to weigh in?
I would agree with everything that's said. I think HubSpot is a great one as well. I actually downloaded one off the Apple App Store. I think it cost me $40 umpteen years ago, and I still use it to this day. It integrates with my messaging. It integrates with everything Apple, and that's kind of what I built everything on. I have the iPad, iPhone, etc. But it integrates everything for me, and it gives me the peak I need, but I don't need a lot of detailed feedback. I like to think that I can keep track of a lot of it, but obviously not all of it. But yeah, mine is just an app, downloaded off the App Store.
Wonderful. And Gario, did you want to say more about CRM or HubSpot?
Yeah, I'm going to build on what Tom said about just over-engineering it. Again, like I mentioned earlier, I've done that, been there, done that. I think your CRM needs to do two things when you're starting out. It needs to be a place to keep notes about your contacts, so what was the last conversation that you had, and map to your sales process. Every sales process, regardless of what it is, has these specific stages: prospecting, connecting, pitching and bridging, asking for the next step in the sales process, overcoming objections. That's it. That can be a line on your whiteboard that you just have the names there and you're just moving them across. It can be a spreadsheet in Google Sheets. It can be HubSpot. Doesn't matter. You just need to be able to quickly glance and see, where am I at? Do I have enough opportunities sitting in each stage in order to meet my revenue goals? That's it.
Excellent. I certainly have more questions prepared, but I would like to do a pulse beat with the audience and find out any questions percolating out there. We're just covering such great content right now. Yes.
I was just going to make a comment, just that the idea of picking up the phone because of all the automations and everybody doing the same thing, that picking up the phone is going to be a differentiator when it comes to marketing. And so there's a number of things out there that you can simply do other people just aren't willing to do. Whether we call it old school.
Yeah. I love that. So his comment or observation is, in this time, if you're willing to pick up the phone, that differentiates you. Because, yeah, most of us are drowning in email. Thank you. Good. Oh, third row. Oh, and we've got, would you mind if we give you a microphone so that everybody can hear? Is that cool?
Thank you. So I kind of look at everything as like, what's the 20/80? So it's interesting hearing your comment about wasting time and not getting stuck in that, and also just your year of setting yourself up, and which is what I'm in right now. After listening to like Tara talking, there's so much about that marketing and looking at yourself as that product and how you paint that out to the world. And then on the other hand of it, though, you still need to be having the conversations and finding clients as well. They both, I think, take a lot of work, and I feel like chicken or egg, which one does it matter to like kind of go really first at? Like, am I wasting time making my website too perfect because I'm not talking to people? But if I'm talking to people and they have nothing to go back on, like what have you found to be the good balance there?
That's good. Go ahead. Each
I think Jazz had a one-liner that I thought was spot on. He said, "Don't let perfect stand in the way of progress." So I think you need to have a LinkedIn page for your business. You probably need to have a website for your business, just so that people can validate you. But don't worry about having it, with tons of bells and whistles and functionality. Not yet. I mean, that can come later. So that's my my view. I keep it simple, keep it focused. Also think about what you do and try to boil that down to a bumper sticker. Anything so it's memorable, it identifies what you do, and that will help people refer you and keep you top of mind.
Thank you. Go ahead.
There's 2 points that I'll add to that is definitely need a LinkedIn profile and have it optimized for the conversation that you want to be having. The good way to think about it is we conduct business in 15, 30, and 60-minute increments, right? So we're constantly scheduling these meetings, but before those meetings, I'm sure folks met people today and you're connecting on LinkedIn and so on. That's an opportunity to start that conversation. It's also an opportunity to continue that conversation after you've spoken to someone. So, thinking through, like, what are the common conversations that you're having? Where do you see people coming to you for? Like, what do you want to be known for? And invest the time and energy putting that stuff out there, because when you connect with someone, the first thing they're going to do is look you up, and they're going to go through that activity feed and say, like, what is this person really about, right? That's an opportunity for you to prime that narrative. And then, just focus on getting out there and actually talking to people. So.
I like that, Gario, what you're saying about on LinkedIn. Go ahead and be explicit. Talk to me about this. I like that. Jake?
And just to build on what Gario said about an activity feed on your LinkedIn, feed it, right? Give opinions. Get out there, put your name on it. One thing you can't waste time doing is thinking, oh my God, is this going to appeal to everybody? It doesn't matter. It just needs to appeal to the people that you need it to appeal to. So, and echo what Tom said, I agree with the speaker earlier today, don't waste time on perfection. It's an absolute fool's hunt. You're going to have problems, you're going to make mistakes, and you know what? That's what makes you learn, and that's what makes you get better. So don't hesitate to make a mistake.
Excellent. Do you see we've got a question there?
do each or any of you have an ideal customer profile or an ideal client in mind, and does it help you say no?
Thank you for that question. Right. What do you do if you're getting into these discussions and you suddenly, your spidey sense is just like, oh, this is not going to work? Yeah.
So it doesn't, once again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but you do need to, and I tell this to my clients, you need to have an ideal client profile. And maybe if you're in multiple verticals, maybe you have to have multiple ideal client profiles based on the verticals that you're in. But that's how you maintain focus. And, so just as an example, my ideal client profile is going to be small to mid-sized companies, meaning 1 to 50 million in revenue, B2B manufacturing. Three bullet points. Now, does that mean I'm not going to talk to somebody who's in service or something like that? No, I'll talk to anybody. But if I'm going to spend my time, money, and energy, I want to have a target as to where I'm going to spend that first. And then if other opportunities come, great, I'll deal with those as they come. But yes, you have to have an ideal client profile. And it may take you a little time to develop it, especially if you're just starting out. But you should be thinking in those terms.
What was your name, sir?
James Young.
James, you hit the nail right on the head with one of the things you said is, when do you say no? The best part about this is you need to see if you're a fit. And if you're not, you say no. Yeah. That's it. A lot of us are in desperation mode in the beginning to say, oh my God, I got to get business. You don't. You got to get the right business, because that's where your reputation lies. You do lousy with somebody, that's going to spread to 19 people. You do great with somebody, it's going to spread to 2. So the negative news spreads faster than the good news. So don't create negative news. Make sure you're a fit, and there's nothing more attractive to somebody than when you say, I'll have to see whether we're the right fit. And that person goes, oh my God, I hope we're a right fit. Hope we're a right fit. It helps really draw the attractiveness of what you're offering.
One thing I'll throw in to both these is it helps people refer you as well, because they know exactly why, like, who are you looking for? And it also helps you focus your marketing, because, again, we don't have unlimited budgets in marketing, especially in the fractional world. So you got to be hyper-focused. If you're going to invest not just money, but time into anything, you got to know who you're talking to and, what's the expected return on it.
Other questions?
You guys talked a lot about pipeline sales process. I'm curious on what your conversion rates are. So if you're thinking about a healthy pipeline, what do conversion rates look like? 1 out of 10, 1 out of 50, 1 out of 2, and you don't have to give exact numbers if you don't want, but for those of us thinking about building our pipeline, what would that look like?
So the conversion rate is actually fairly low, but the name of the game is to build. When I first started, my objective was I wanted to build out an ecosystem of other fractional executives. First and foremost, that way I could assist them. If somebody said, "Hey, you're in sales. Who do you know that can help me with a value prop or branding?" So I wanted to have CMOs, other fractionals. So most of my clients come from referrals. What I found is that when I built out my ecosystem, I probably am now that I've been doing it a couple of years. If you looked at my CRM, I probably have over 800 entries of other fractionals. But of the 800, I probably have 20 that are what I would call strong referral partners. So that kind of gives you an idea of how the funnel, and in order to get those 800, those are people I've met with either in person or via Zoom. So in order to get those 800, my goal was to have 15 meetings a week. In order to get those, I probably did 20 outreaches a day. So you can see how quickly that funnel tapers.
That's really good, and I just want to amplify what you're saying. I'm so glad you brought this up, because now it seems so obvious to build an ecosystem, because I think if you have someone who's a trusted financial advisor, when you figure out, I should do a will, you go to them and you say, do you have an attorney that you could recommend? Like, you sort of expect in other parts of your life that they have a reliable ecosystem, and you trust their word of mouth about that referral. So, Gario, did you have something?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what's going to be helpful. So when I was doing both marketing and sales, the number was 5-to-1, at a 5-to-1 conversion rate. But in the consulting world, I think a more valuable metric is number of active opportunities sitting in your pipeline. So do you have opportunities that you obviously need to know what your revenue goal is for the quarter, and do you have opportunities sitting in each stage, like I was mentioning, that will get you to that goal so that you can focus your time and energy on moving people through your sales pipeline. And a good rule of thumb is like to try and have 50% above goal in each stage of your pipeline.
I would agree with that. I would just challenge you just for a second. We always want to know those numbers, 1 out of 5, 1 out of 10, but we don't look at anything else in life like this, right? I don't say I have to meet 10 people to make one new friend. I have to date 1 million people to meet a spouse. But in sales, we do that. So I would say go ahead and measure your conversion rate, but don't live by it. Don't say, oh my God, I'm going to have to make 50 outreaches to get one client. No, you should improve your outreach. You should improve your message. Then you make that conversion rate climb. So I would encourage you to measure it, but don't be locked in by it. God, if I do that, I'd still be dating to find a wife at this point. Oh, I'm down 900,000 people. I still need 100,000 to go, right? But we look at sales differently. So read the metrics. Don't get locked in by them.
I like what you're saying, Jake, because it also really hints at maybe sometimes let's do the unexpected, or let's say yes to an invitation to go to some event or business association that we would not ordinarily expect is our quote-unquote target market, but just go with an expectation of having a great time, like you say, meet people, chat. Something unexpected that is powerful for your business might surface. It just might. Other questions out there? Yes.
A question and maybe an observation. I'm looking at this and hearing all of you say, metrics. Yes, I think it's good to have those goals, but it feels like it's. Can you hear me? Yeah. That the metrics are governed by both a quantitative and a qualitative set of factors, right? So it's how good are those outreaches, right? You could be doing 100 outreaches a week, but they're not relevant to who you are and the type of client that you're trying to attract. So, and then some of that is like if you're doing 100 outreaches and they're not the right client, you're going to feel like crap at the end of the week. So are you even measuring the right things? So I think that's part of it, is bridging both the qualitative and the quantitative metrics.
Great observation.
Very good observation. I'm curious, do any of you now, or when you were starting out, were you part of some type of, I'm just going to use the term peer advisory, where you would maybe come together once or twice a month? I mean, in this market, one of our famous business leaders, Bill George, he teaches business ethics at Harvard. He writes about True North leadership and how he's been part of a men's group for decades, and how, they just would help each other and be a sounding board for each other in peerage, but just, keeping things on track. Any thoughts on that?
I would totally agree. So once again, the group I'm licensed through Sales Acceleration. When they bring on new advisors, we call them classes. So like when I started, there were 6 people that started the same time I did. So we were a class. And we stayed, after we start our individual practices, twice a month, we'd have a call. and we're all over the country, just to check in. How are you doing? What are you doing that's working? What am I doing? Just to compare best practices. So yes, whether it's, a group like Voyager, maybe you have to build your own peer group. Start your own informal peer group, or if you belong to another one, yes, that's definitely highly recommended in my opinion.
Locally, I've been a part of Coalition 9. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of it. And the real value for me was, yes, it's a peer group, but part of sales that folks typically don't talk about is how much you have to practice. You actually have to practice having the conversation, practice giving your pitch, practice overcoming objections, like just really build that muscle of conversation. And my peer group, one thing that they did that I really appreciated is just be that sounding board. Like, here's how I'm thinking about talking about what I'm doing. What does it make sense to you? Does it not? Where are you getting confused? And just really building that muscle of talking with folks. So I can't say enough good things about Coalition 9, but also just having a sounding board that you can practice on as well.
Excellent. Jake?
I don't have a formal one. I have a group that I do usually talk to. I don't have an organization like the two of them, but we always make it a practice that when you see their name on the caller ID, you don't pick up and say hello. You say, are you calling to vent or do you need advice? Then you know the tack to take for the rest of the conversation. So that's my peer group.
That's beautiful. How about a round of applause for Jake Stahl, Gario Harrison, Tom Holderly. I'm Lori Creever, and Katie, Katie's going to give us some instruction.
Thank you. That was inspiring. I don't track metrics on conversion rates either. Yeah. Okay, thank you, panelists. We're going to take a 15-minute break now, but you should be downstairs on the 3rd floor, the Mosaic space at 4:30, where we're going to have our Hive sessions. You'll get connected to a small group of attendees to start building deeper connections for this conference and beyond. Who knows, it could be the start of your peer group. Yes, thank you. And be sure to post on social media using the hashtag FRAC2023. Thank you.